Welcome to the Baseball Insiders Friday afternoon show, third show of the week. Non-tender deadline is today. Plenty of rumors to talk about. The top pitching names have found a few meetings already. Willy Adames, if it wasn't already clear, he was going to be gone from the Brewers. Pat Murphy made it even clearer. And we're going to talk about every single free agent on the market during this episode, except for Juan Soto. Not going to touch on him. Never heard of him. Not interesting. And then we'll talk about him. There's no way we're not going to talk about him. But join me, as always, answer your questions, and take us through the latest in the rumor mill before we break for the weekend and come back on Monday is FanSided's MLB insider, Robert Murray. Robert, how are you doing, dude?
I am doing great. We've got plenty of stuff to talk about. Justin, I will say, if we see that Paul Skeens comment one more time, we will block you from the show. So that we just wanted to get that off my chest. But I have news to start the show. I have 2 arbitration settlements that have not been reported yet, at least not that I have seen. So we're going to dive into it right now. Hopefully MLB Deadline News is watching the show so it can aggregate it. But Tyler Wade and the San Diego Padres have agreed to a 1-year, $900,000 deal for 2025. That also includes a $1 million club option for 2026 with a $500,000 buyout. So that is the first one on the docket. And then the second one, Zach McKinstry and the Detroit Tigers have agreed to a 1-year, $1.65 million deal to avoid arbitration. So we will have plenty of those coming throughout the day. It will not be as active as like the ARB deals or whatever. Like, I can't remember what ARB deadline day is, but that's always crazy. But it should be. We're going to have a blast over this next few hours here. I can't wait to dive into all of it. But we got lots of rumors to talk about, Adam. Let's do it. How we doing?
We sure do. I'm doing good. For the YouTube commenter who asked if I was trapped in someone's closet, the answer is yes, but I'm here by choice. Today could get a little bit crazier than the Rule 5 protection deadline, as was pretty clearly laid out by a lot of folks. This was the Rule 5 protection year for the 2020 draft picks, and there were not that many of those. So if you're looking at people who are under or over 18 during that particular year, it's a lower number than ever before. So didn't quite go so wild. But we're going to have some moves today in some capacities. Some players will be non-tendered, maybe some minor trades. We will go as far as we can in helping you out and laying out some potential cases. We're just 4.5 hours away from that deadline. I could have sworn that MLB had it listed at 6 p.m. Eastern. Somehow it's now 8 p.m. Eastern. So shout out to the night owls on the East Coast. You're going to be enjoying some maybe you'll learn what happened to Trent Grisham while you're enjoying a fine Italian dinner and smashing some beers at a Friday pregame. People still pregame, right? Got to do the business. Going to say join the Discord if you're not in. The comments are doing it for us right now. We had our first private all-star tier channel chat with Robert yesterday, an hour of Q&A on the clock, beginning to end. He answered all of your questions. So if it seems like we're a little thin on all-star questions today, maybe that's why. But if we've got a few loaded. We're going to go to the comments afterwards for sure. There's the rumor mill tier where you can ask Robert and I questions between shows at a normal pace, but we've got dedicated Q&A time in the all-star tier, as well as priority responses in this here chat. We're doing 4 Q&As a month, 2 with Robert, 2 where I'm going to distill what I'm hearing as well. So let's roll. How about that? And also the Moonshot, couldn't recommend it more. That is FanSided MLB's weekly baseball email newsletter where the FanSided team, including Robert Murray, and I think I'm going to be in there in a couple of weeks, break down all the biggest stories in the big leagues with humor, insight, and behind-the-scenes info. So subscribe to that. Now, we don't want to talk too much about Juan Soto because there's not a lot of movement there. We know the teams.
Yep.
We're going to be touching on him before the end of the show, but only barely. I really want to focus on everybody else as well as the potential non-tenders because I know that's where everyone's head's at today. I want to start by jumping off to the top of the pitching market because there was a report yesterday that Blake Snell has already spoken with both the Dodgers and Red Sox. That would make sense. That would track with the supposed big spenders of the offseason and teams with pitching needs. You got Max Fried. You got Corbin Burnes at the top of the market too. So those are the Snell suitors we know of. Seen the Orioles and Dodgers rumored a bit for Burnes. Anything you can tell us about Snell and the top of the pitching market?
Yeah, I'm curious to see exactly how fast this pitching market moves because the Roki Sasaki element to this equation really kind of complicates it because we're talking about a guy who is viewed across the league as a frontline starter. He probably will not sign until after January 15th. So that really is going to end up, it's going to have these teams that are looking for starting pitching kind of waiting in limbo a little bit, or they could end up being aggressive for these guys like Blake Snell, like Corbin Burnes or Max Fried. How exactly or how fast these move remains to be seen. And I would imagine that the teams that are in on these starting pitchers, but also in on Blake Snell, or also in on Juan Soto, I should say, will want to wait for the Soto sweepstakes before acting on a potential starting pitcher. That being said, though, I have to imagine that Blake Snell is going to really want to have this timeline moved up compared to last offseason when he ended up signing late into spring training or like right before the season started. He's already met with the Dodgers and Red Sox, as Jon Heyman reported. There are other teams involved there as well. And considering the second half of the year that he had in San Francisco, where he was arguably the best pitcher in baseball, I mean, there was a stretch there that he was just flat out dominant. It was an extended stretch as well. He is going to be in line for a huge deal, at least seemingly so. And then another guy that I think is really interesting, and I mean, for obvious reasons, Corbin Burnes. I saw him up close in Milwaukee when he was coming up, and he oozed superstar. And he the phrasing on that's a little interesting, but
it got said. We can't unsay it now.
No, but like you could see all the ingredients there with Burnes, and he has been even better than I think a lot of people could have expected. We're talking about a guy who is going to continually be in the Cy Young conversation for an extended amount of time. Just turned 30. He's going to be looking at a massive deal. I still would be pretty surprised if he returns to Baltimore. We'll see there. But my guess is he goes elsewhere. And then a guy like Max Fried, I think he would look like a perfect fit in Baltimore. I really do. I think he's an established guy. He's a left-handed arm. It's going to be more than just the Orioles involved in this as well. Like there's going to be a widespread market for a guy like Max Fried, but all three of these guys are going to be in position to do really well from what I've gathered. I'm still thinking it could take a little bit for at least some of these guys to go, especially with the Sasaki element and also Soto looming on the market as well. So I would remain patient. It's going to be the key word yet again for this offseason is patience. But those guys will land very lucrative long-term contracts.
And Sasaki, we now know January 15th. I mean, there's a long, far away from now time limit attached to Roki Sasaki's timeline. So keep that in mind when trying to figure out these pitching free agents. We mentioned the Red Sox there for Snell for these top pitching targets. Red Sox fans in the comments, I know, are going to want to hear us talk about Sam Kennedy yesterday, sort of saying, look, 90, 95 wins is the target, whatever it takes, I'll pass that CBT threshold. Now, that's about $70 million of spending this offseason. He didn't say I'm going to, but he said basically the door is open to doing it. That's what Red Sox fans want to hear. They also did hear last year that they plan to go full throttle, and then they went, graciously about 1/4 of a throttle. But the idea of the Red Sox spending up to that limit seems to align with what you have heard recently and what we've talked about on this show, that whether it's Soto or whether it's the pitchers or whether it's a combination of all of these things, they plan to be players for all the major free agents this year, and they intend to get something done. So I assume, regardless of the number, that's still what we're hearing.
Oh yeah, like they're going to be aggressive this offseason, and I've heard it. Every other reporter has heard it. The Red Sox ownership is now speaking out about it. Like they are absolutely making it clear that they want to spend and that they will spend. And if they don't get a guy like Soto, I'm really curious to see exactly how they go about doing that spending. I think obviously adding another big bopper or two to the lineup would be smart, but also really upgrading and fortifying that rotation would be really smart as well. And getting one of those upper echelon starters, whether it's a Fried, whether it's a Burnes or a Snell or whoever, or maybe even go out and trade for Garrett Crochet, who is also pretty affordable. And I think Crochet's presence on the market as well is something that shouldn't be forgotten about as well. And he's already drawing like big interest as well. And Chris Getz told us at the GM meetings that he has already drawn interest from more teams this offseason than he did at the deadline. So I think he is absolutely another factor that's going to be like, you have to add him to the equation for the starting pitching market as well. This market is flush with options and some really good options as well. But that going back to the Red Sox, I would expect them to spend. And if they don't go out and get, if they don't end up getting Soto, I would not be surprised in the slightest if they got one of those big starting pitchers. And then what else they add on top of it remains to be seen. But just I'll continually say it, like reading all the tea leaves. It's just, it points to the Red Sox spending. And that's a really exciting thing for that fan base and for that locker room. Cause I think the fan base's frustrations were extremely warranted. Usually I'm like settled down a little bit, but they had every right to be pissed. And I hope that tide's starting to change here. And all signs point toward it actually changing right now.
Well, let this be a lesson to you, Red Sox fans. Bullying works. So keep bullying. Although I'm sure that knowing people from Boston, that lesson was instilled in them at a young age and will never be forgotten. But I can already tell that clip is going to be another one that's going to be clipped and shared online with me staring and nodding. So I did my best staring and nodding that time. I tried not to interrupt, but also not look like I was completely zonked. So I think overall a win-win. Yes, I am stuck in a closet. On to one of the other offseason's top free agents, Willy Adames, who is someone we talked about a lot more before the offseason actually began, because we've long pegged him as a Dodgers fit. We talked about it at the deadline. We talked about it last offseason. You know, when a lot of people, I think, thought the Brewers were going to regress. So it felt more valid to talk about it. Like, oh, okay, at the deadline, maybe they dangle Willy Adames when they're sitting in the middle of the NL Central. Instead, they kind of ran away with the division. They made that impossible. Playoff run wasn't as long as they'd hoped, but they were obviously able to compete last year, kept Adames all year. Pat Murphy, winning the Manager of the Year this week, essentially said, you know, if he comes back, that means he didn't get the deal he wanted, which I think we all knew that. Half quiet part out loud, half just let's face reality. He's not coming back to Milwaukee unless his loftier goals don't materialize. But that makes me think, okay, you know, Dodgers were a connection forever, but I haven't heard much about them and Adames this offseason. What are the other teams that might be involved there? And I'm assuming he does get to that number and doesn't ultimately have to come back to Milwaukee. But what are you thinking there?
I would be really, 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 really surprised if he returned to Milwaukee. And I think at this point, it is going to mark the end of one of the best. Am I back? Okay, cool. All right, good. I froze for a little bit. My apologies, everybody. But that would mark the end of one of the most storied recent runs in Brewers franchise history. And I know that's a pretty bold statement, especially for a guy that was only there for a few seasons, but Adames's impact was felt across the organization, whether it was on the field where he was just an incredibly talented shortstop, but also could hit for power, but also in the locker room where he ended up emerging as one of the key leaders almost immediately after being traded to Milwaukee. And he was instrumental in the development of Jackson Chourio. He was instrumental in building that locker room chemistry in Milwaukee as well. And when the Brewers entered last offseason, they had to make a decision. Do you trade Willy Adames or not? And they had some really intriguing offers. They had some offers that they absolutely considered, and yet they decided to hold on to Adames because they wanted to run it back with him one more time, but they also viewed him as a guy that was like, you cannot replace Willy Adames. And the fact that he's going to be gone, how the heck they replace him in that locker room and in the lineup remains to be seen. But if you look at his market, I would expect, I've admittedly not heard much Dodgers buzz around Adames so far this offseason, but I think the Atlanta Braves would make sense. I think the Boston Red Sox would make sense. I think the New York Mets would make sense as well. I would look at those four teams as possible fits there for Adames. He will do very well in free agency. I think whatever team signs him is going to immediately feel the impact that he had in Milwaukee, and it's going to end up being. I'm going to go on record right now. If you sign Willy Adames, that is going to be the best big money signing of the offseason. That is even over Juan Soto, even over. I know that's a very bold statement, but I'm talking from a production and a locker room standpoint. I think Adames is as good as it gets, and he should do very well in free agency.
I was going to say, this was going to be my lock. I have followed the Red Sox for so many years as an avowed hater of the Boston Red Sox, but more so as a fan of their rival. If the Red Sox sign Adames and a top starting pitcher, Snell or Burnes or Fried, they will have a better record at the All-Star break than whatever team signs Juan Soto. Like if they miss on Soto and they make those two moves, they will have a better record than whatever team signs Soto. That's my stone cold lock prediction, November 22nd.
I think that's a great take. Because if you end up adding, let's say, Adames and Max Fried, or if you add Adames and any of those top starting pitchers, I think you're automatically going to end up having top 2, top 3 offseason. It may not even be number 2 or 3. It might end up being number 1. Like adding 2 of those like franchise altering pieces would be huge. So we'll see. But I'm liking what you're cooking there, Adam.
That's what I'm cooking. That's simply what I'm cooking. We're going to move on. We're going to talk non-tenders. We're going to answer your questions. But before, one last Soto check-in as the week ends. Not on teams. We know who's in the fray. We know they haven't talked money. We were getting the weird puff piece updates. One article comes out from Jon Heyman and Yankee fans get enthusiastic. Article comes out from Bob Clappish. Yankee fans get angry. Everybody's grasping at straws right now. But I think the real tangible question is, we know everyone's met. We know having a relationship with the owner is important to him. We know all of these different teams have made their pitches. But all we need to know at this point is what comes next. Because I think everybody's thinking, okay, second round of meetings. Some teams get meetings. Is there anything more formal happening? What's the timeline? So my question to you is just, what can we expect next? A big empty gap before the winter meetings? More movement behind the scenes that doesn't go public. What is a free agency as large as Soto's look like? And when do you anticipate we get any closer to a resolution here?
Yeah, I would imagine those conversations between Soto's representation, Scott Boras, and all of these teams are going to continue. I don't know if he's going to end up taking additional meetings with these teams because these first meetings were lengthy. They were about getting to know the ownership. They were about getting to know what they viewed or what they wanted to do with the payroll in 2025 and beyond. There was a lot of questions that Soto was asking, and it was just like I don't want to say meet and greet, but it was he really wanted to have an understanding of exactly what these franchises look like, because he's probably going to end up being with one of these teams for 10, 15 years, somewhere in that ballpark. And I would imagine a timeline for it. This isn't going to drag on like these signings last offseason. I think we're probably looking at maybe a little before the winter meetings or like at the winter meetings is my current guess for when Soto could sign. That is, I want to say what my gut's telling me is at the winter meetings, because Boras is going to want as much spotlight on this contract as possible, because there's no better place to do a big deal than the winter meetings. Boras has done it year in and year out. He's had these big free agents, but not the size of Soto. Like, this is a new one for him. So my guess is he's going to want as much spotlight as possible. So I'm eyeing up the winter meetings or somewhere around that time frame for when Soto could come off the board. But as far as where he may end up, I'm still thinking it's going to end up coming down between the Mets and the Yankees. That is my current feel. I do want to say I do respect the heck out of the Kansas City Royals for checking in on Soto. I know Heyman ended up reporting that. Good for them. Like, that is, they last offseason they spent and they succeeded this year. Like, they look good, and they never, I don't think they ever had a real shot here for Juan Soto, but the fact that they checked in just to see what it would take, major props. Like that, JJ Piccolo, ownership there in Kansas City, good job.
If they had signed Juan Soto, I do think the Chiefs might have had to move across the border. Like, that stadium project would have failed if they had to scrounge up $700 million for Juan Soto. But, we gave the Royals kudos last offseason too, and people laughed at us and said, well, what's the point of signing Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha? And the point is that you can get 3 of the top 10 ERAs in the American League and go to the playoffs. So after winning 52 games the year prior or whatever. So, if you're in that position, why don't you try it? Try some infrastructure spending. Like we said, it never hurts to get in touch with Scott Boras either. Even if you don't think you can get a Juan Soto package together, he's got plenty of other clients. And if you intend to spend, you probably intend to spend on some of his clients. So a good call. Good job by the Royals. And remember, when it comes to Juan Soto information, only trust verified reporters unless what the person is saying confirms your prior beliefs, in which case, believe whatever you want. It feels awesome.
That's well said. I do the exact same thing for the Philadelphia Eagles. I need people to feed into my delusions when it comes to the Birds. So I totally feel you on that one, my guy.
And by the way, best wishes to Daniel Jones, who is no longer the quarterback of the New York Giants, nor is he QB4 of the New York Giants as he was briefly yesterday, nor is he a scout team safety of the New York Giants as he was yesterday at practice. Seriously, he actually handled the situation in New York over the years with class and grace. So honestly, best of luck to Daniel Jones, but no, it was not working out here. I don't want to get canceled like L. Duncan, so I won't say anything mean about Daniel Jones. Okay, let's open the notebook before we head into a few questions, only to touch on non-tenders, I would say. Because I think a lot of the questions are just going to be, hey, what do you know about my team? I've got a couple in mind, but obviously it's people going to be, asking about their own specific players. We don't know much now, but are there any surprising names you hear could be involved tonight? I'll throw out from the Yankees side, Trent Grisham, I firmly believe, will be non-tendered with his $7 million salary. John Birdie feels realistic too. I want everyone to know that the Yankees added another catcher to their 40-man roster this week. They now have 5. So if you're thinking they might want to save Jose Trevino's money, I'm also thinking that. But anything coming out of your notebook, anything for fans to keep an eye on?
Yeah, I think a guy that couldn't that you may want to watch is Jordan Romano in Toronto. I think he is a really interesting non-tender candidate for the Blue Jays. I'm not saying I've heard one way or the other, but I think that's going to be a really intriguing and difficult decision for the Blue Jays to make, especially considering the projected salary that he's going to have for 2025. I also think I wouldn't be really surprised if he got non-tendered. But a guy like Camilo Doval in San Francisco is a very talented guy, but he struggled last year, and I think he is a really interesting change of scenery candidate. And I would not be surprised at all if he is traded at some point this offseason. I think those are the two that I'm really watching. I think Trent Grisham is an interesting one that you mentioned as well. I'd imagine they're not going to be in a hurry to pay him that salary, especially considering that they never really used him at the World Series or just in the postseason in general. So those are the 3 ones that I'm kind of watching right now.
Yeah, 0 reps in the World Series. He and Duke Ellis got more run than Trent Grisham during the Yankees playoff run. And if you're asking who's Duke Ellis, it's another guy who's already been non-tendered. So there you go. Great. We'll get to a couple of your questions. One that I definitely want to note here is we got asked about Cody Bellinger. Cade Gilbertson asked what teams are in on Belly. That comes from the Ken Rosenthal report that, hey, this is a contract the Cubs might want to shop, which I think we suspected back when Bellinger unsurprisingly picked up that option. He's not quite in the Jordan Montgomery camp of well, obviously they're going to shop this contract they don't want, but the Cubs would probably rather somebody else foot some of the bill here. And they're in a different place as a franchise than they thought they would be last year when they brought Bellinger back. So the Yankees have been loosely connected him a little bit. He does play first base, so not just a Soto alternative. But curious what teams you're thinking might be a fit for Bellinger, anything you're hearing in that space.
Yeah, I can't imagine there's going to be many teams in a hurry to trade for Bellinger. He's obviously an incredibly talented guy, but his salary for 2025 is very high. And he's coming off of not a great season with the Cubs. He played in 130 games last year, hit about 266 with about 18 homers. His talent alone warrants teams like checking in and seeing what it'll take to trade for him. But at that current salary, the Cubs probably will not get that much in return. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Cubs do indeed, or if they are motivated to trade Bellinger, maybe they end up eating some of that salary to try to get a better return. So that's just one of the scenarios that I think makes sense. But I absolutely buy what Ken Rosenthal reported about Bellinger. It's something I heard as well, was not able to confirm it, but Ken, when he reports something, you can take it to the bank. It's possible he's played his last game in Chicago, but it's going to be really difficult for the Cubs to trade that contract. I don't have any specific teams though that are interested at this point. That's to answer your question there.
We will definitely touch on Bellinger again before too long, I assume, as the winter meetings approach. Bunch of Padres questions here, many of them about Luis Arraez's future. And Will Holder asked one that sort of ties in. Are they committed to Xander Bogaerts at short after putting him at second last year? With second, potentially, we don't know if Arraez is going to be occupying second. There's some people positing maybe Bo Bichette is someone who could find his way to San Diego if the Blue Jays want to entertain that before his walk here. Either way, all this to say, Luis Ariza's future and the Padres' plans surrounding their infield.
Yeah, I want to make sure I get his projected. So one thing I know about the Padres is I do not believe they have much flexibility this offseason in terms of spending. And Ariza is a really interesting one here for San Diego because if you look at it, he is obviously a very talented offensive player, but defensively he offers almost nothing. And at $14.6 million, can you invest those resources elsewhere and try to upgrade a couple of different positions? I think you can for sure. So I don't know what the Padres are going to do. I don't have any insight into the thinking on this one at all. I want to make that abundantly clear when I say this. But if I was them, I would non-tender Ariza and try to use that money saved, the $14.6 million projected, to bolster some other parts of the roster. And as far as what the rest of their infield picture could look like, I would get Bo Bichette trade talks out of your head because the Blue Jays made it abundantly clear at the deadline last year that they were not trading either Vlad Jr. or Bo Bichette and that they wanted to compete in 2025. Well, we're in the offseason before the 2025 season, and the Blue Jays are trying to be involved in the Juan Soto sweepstakes. And I can't imagine they're going to entice Juan Soto to sign in Toronto by trading Bo Bichette. So I would really not get your hopes up there as far as a Bo Bichette trade. I'm really curious to see exactly what Preller does this offseason with such little flexibility. I mean, okay, let me rephrase that. He's got some sort of flexibility, but it's not as much as he had in years past. So he'll have to get creative. But that being said, he was creative last year during the season when he got Luis Ariza for pennies on the dollar. So I mean, maybe he does it again with somebody else. Nothing surprises me with AJ Preller, but that is currently my read on that right now.
When you heard what he said, the Blue Jays will not be trading Bo Bichette unless Juan Soto demands it as part of his follow-up meeting with the Toronto Blue Jays.
Do not aggregate that. Do not aggregate that.
Aggregate it. Tag me. Only tag me, not Robert. I said it. Robert, you got a question here. Are you tendering me a contract? And if so, will we be settling out of court or will you be taking me to arbitration? I think this one's easy, but I figured I'd feed it to you anyway.
Yeah, sources tell me that Adam Weinrib and I have agreed to a lifelong contract. The deal is done. The physical is complete. So, Adam, you are stuck with me for the rest of your life, and I hope you're happy about that.
You know, I hate it when I have one stuck in the drafts and I can't confirm it, and then I get scooped by somebody else. I had that one for like a week, and Robert just got me on it. So I'm happy with it, but obviously I wish I had been able to tweet that out ahead of time.
Yeah, my apologies to Adam for scooping him on that. My tweet that I've teased since Monday's show is still in the drafts. I'm not kidding you, folks. This is about as frustrated as I've ever been waiting for a scoop. This is absolutely freaking brutal. I hate my life. This is and it's not even that big of a signing. That's the thing.
That's the thing. Trust me, everybody.
Because Adam knows what it is.
I know what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's the thing is I have the team, I have the player, I have the years, I have the dollars, and I have everything else about the deal. I can't get the go text. It is, it's absolutely crazy. But also I want to answer this question for Vincent because I've seen Angels fans ask. It remains the same. As far as the Angels go, is they are looking for everything to upgrade that roster because they need as much help on that roster as humanly possible. And Perry is continuing to be active in conversations all around the league, looking for, every position, probably besides catcher, to bolster. And as far as the non-tenders go, I think one that would make some sense. I'm not saying this is happening or not, but I think Patrick Sandoval is an interesting non-tender candidate. I think he could use a change of scenery, especially for the contract that he's projected to get. I want to make sure I get that right. MLB Trade Rumors has him projected at $5.9 million. And considering that his production from last year, I think that warrants a conversation about whether or not he gets non-tendered. So we'll see. But that's another one that I'm kind of watching throughout the day here.
Ryan Pizer asking us where we expect the Yankees to go in the relief pitcher market. I'll go ahead and jump that and say 3 pitchers you haven't thought about in 4 years. Adbert Alzolay on a 2-year deal with rehab for 2025. I think the Yankees would be a great fit for Duvall, but I don't know. I'm curious to see your thoughts there.
Yeah, I think Duvall is a really interesting one. I could see Philadelphia being interested. I think the Cubs make sense because the Cubs, well, we all know that they need relievers, but all of these contending teams, or just any team in general, needs like a bullpen help. And I think Duvall could be a real strong bounce back, like buy a low candidate for some of these teams. As I said at the start of the show, I think there's a shot that he's traded this offseason. And I mean, who knows? Maybe it happens before the winter meetings. We'll see.
Well, one thing I can guarantee you is that this podcast oozes superstar, and we will see you back here on Monday ahead of Thanksgiving week.
Can't take you anywhere.
We'll be doing lifetime contract, dude. Sorry. We'll be doing shows on Monday and Wednesday ahead of the holiday at the same times we did them this week. So 3:30 on Monday afternoon and 1 o'clock Eastern time on Wednesday. Then you get your turkey. Then you get to watch some of the most dog shit football of all time. Bears, Lions, Giants, Cowboys, God bless. And then whatever the night game is also terrible. The Black Friday game is Raiders, Chiefs. I mean, honestly, who is this for? They know we're going to watch, even if it's bad. And that's why they're doing it. But Robert Murray, I could not do the show without you. Thank you for the scoops. And hopefully we get to drop that one this weekend, because it's killing me almost as much as it's killing you.
Dude, this is brutal. This is genuinely the least fun I've ever had waiting on a go text, because we're entering day 5 of this watch. I almost said his name. I caught myself. I caught myself. But this is brutal. And if I don't get it, if I get scooped in this one, like you're gonna see smoke coming out of my ears all the way from wherever you are from Scottsdale, because this is tough. But I got to do my job the right way. I got to make sure that I go about my business the right way, because I'm trying to be in this as long as possible, and doing the business the right way is the only way to do it. But we'll hopefully have news to report at some point. We'll see. But Adam, I appreciate you. Joanne, our lovely producer, we appreciate you. Not just me, but it's everybody here.
I also.
Everyone in the comments, we appreciate you. Vincent, you know what? I'll give you a hint, because I'm feeling nice today. He plays baseball. That is my hint. So there you go. But yeah, no, we appreciate everybody. Adam, I appreciate you. You're the man.
Appreciate you as well. Obviously, a burner bringing up if it's Colin Poche being traded. So I will use this opportunity to say Colin Poche is one of, I think, one professional baseball player who has me blocked on Twitter. So shout out to Colin Poche. I just said one time in 2019 that I hope he gave up a home run at Yankee Stadium, because I think Mike Petriello on the StatCast broadcast was hyping him up. And I was like, hope he gives up a bomb here. And he name searches and he blocked me. It wasn't even mean, but I got blocked by Colin Poche. So I do hope he gets traded as well out of Tampa Bay. And if he wants to come on the podcast, I'd be willing to have him. I don't know if you would.
No, I would love to. I absolutely would. And Drew, does he pitch?
Colin Poche, yeah.
Yeah, Colin Poche. Yeah, he pitches. Yeah, he does. Yeah. Wait, who else has Adam blocked? No one should have Adam blocked.
I really don't think that many people do. If I had them in mind, I don't know if any notable. If I think of them, I'll bring the block list on a future episode. But Colin Poche, I just remember being so weird. Like, come on, man! I didn't even tag you. Like, you searched your name and then blocked me for saying I hope you give up a bomb. Like, I get it, but also,
yeah,
okay.
he owns you. That's only. Yeah,
Turns out he owns me. So whatever. Yeah. I got scared. Oh, the King Source has me blocked too, but I don't know who else.
That's a good thing. You don't have to see his tweets.
No.
Yeah.
Well, new Twitter, unfortunately, I can see everybody's stupid tweets. It just comes with a message that's like, you're blocked by this person, but here's all their tweets anyway. And it's like, that's not what I wanted at all. But I will come up with a list. MLB Deadline News. Reach out and maybe I'll come up with some good names for you. Until Monday's show, we'll see you then. Hopefully we have some more news. Take care, everybody.
Take care, buddy.